kundalam go kule brajamanam. Yashoda biolukala davamanam. Param Rishtam Achanta To Drutya Gopya Rudantam Moha Netra Yugmam Rijantam Karam Boja Yugmena Satanka Netram Muswasa Kampa Chirekanka Kanta Stita Grivam Damodaram Bhakti Bhattam Iti Driksali Labhya Ananda Kunde Swagosham Nimajjantam Akyapayantam Hari Esita Geshu Bhaktajitattam Puna Prematastam Shatavriti Vande Padam Deva Moksham Namoksha Vadimba Nachanyam Vrineham Pareshadapiha Idam Teva Purnata Gopala Balam Sada memanyasya virastam kimanyai. Idam te mukam bhojam achanta nilai. Vritam kuntalai snigda raktashcha gopya. Muhushchumbitam bimba rakta dharang me. Manastya virastam alam lakshalabai. Namo Deva Damoda Ananta Vishnu. Prasida Prabodhuka Jalabdi Magnam. Kripa Dristi Vishyati Dinam Bhatanu. Ilihanesha mam agyam ajaksha drishya kube atmajo bhatta murchayvayatvat kwaya mochi to bhakti bhaja kritaucha tata prema bhaktim swakame priyachcha Namokshe graho mesti damodareha. Namaste stu damne spuradipti damne. Twaiti odarayata vishvasya damne. Namo radikayai twadiya priyayai. Namo Nantalilaya Devaya Tubhyam. Namo Radikaya Kodiya Priyaya. Namo Nantalilaya Devaya Tubhyam. Namo Radikaya Kodiya Priyaya. Namo Nantalilaya Devaya Tubhya. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare. Hare Ramo, Hare Ramo, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So we're continuing to discuss Damodarastic prayers. And we'll look at Brihad Bhagavatamrita also, continuing there and discussing the glories, especially of Gokula and its relation to Goloka, the connection between the topmost portion of the spiritual world and its outpost in the material world, which should never be downplayed or downgraded or thought in any way to be inferior. And as we've been discussing in previous talks, Gokul Vrindavan, Boma Vrindavan on earth, is the same as Goloka Vrindavan, but there are some special pastimes that Krishna only shows in Gokul. So let's first of all talk about Damodarastic. Iti Driksalila Bir Ananda Kund. We're focusing on pastimes like the Damodar Leela, in which the Lord becomes under the control of his devotee. So this is how the prayer in this verse addresses the phenomenon of Krishna being dominated by his devotee. It's focusing on Damodar Leela, of course, but it's also referring Iti Driksa Leela Bir Ananda Kund. It's referring to other pastimes like that, and we'll take a brief look at those from Srimad Bhagavatam. So, in such pastimes, Swalila, Krishna has a personal stock of intimate pastimes saturated with friendliness. Now, when friendliness is used as a description, it doesn't exclusively mean Sakirasa or those in a friendly relationship with Krishna, like the cowherd boys. In this usage of friendliness, it refers to intimacy. So even that can cover Mother Yashoda, Nanda Maharaj, the gopis, Surit, well-wisher of intimacy. So there's the Swalila, personal stock of these pastimes, internal, insider, confidential. Itidrik Salila Bir Ananda Kund. The Ananda Kund. Sanatana Goswami describes it's a kund, it's a pool filled with liquid Ananda. So by Krishna's personal stock of pastimes, he drowns the inhabitants of Vrindavan in such a pool of liquid ecstasy. Swagosham Namajantam Akyapayantam. Swagosham, his own people, his own personal stock of pastimes, and his own people, the Brajavasis. He wants to demonstrate something. And we'll hear more about this. He wants to demonstrate to the internal devotees and the external devotees. To those devotees who are in pure, 100% spontaneous love, the Brijvasis, as well as those devotees who have some Bhagavat Aishvarya Gyan, knowledge of the Lord's opulences and majesty and power to which they're attached. So we'll talk more about that. Swagosham. He's got his own people, the Brijvasis, and Swagosham Namajandam Akabayanta. He's immersing them in the Ananda Kund, and at the same time, he's Akapayantam, he's demonstrating, he's showing various types of devotees. Adiyesita Geshu Bhaktarjitatvam. He's showing devotees who are attached to his opulence that Bhaktarjitatvam, he is controlled. He comes under the control. He's conquered by the love of the spontaneous devotees who don't care to know he's God, who don't care to know of his inconceivable powers. To them, Krishna is just their dearest friend, dearest son, dearest lover. He's conquered. Krishna is conquered by them. Una prematas tam shata vritti vande. So again and again, hundreds and thousands of times, we offer our obeisances to such pure lovers of Krishna and also to the prem, to the pure love. So let's do a quick review for those of you who haven't heard. We're in Brihad Bhagavatamrita, Volume 3, Chapter 5, and we've been discussing how the secret portion of Vaikuntha, one of them is Ayodhya, the other is Dwarka, but they don't compare to Goloka, because only in Goloka are the Lord and his devotees free to engage in 100% intimacy, devoid of majesty. So Narada Muni is speaking, and he's explaining Tadrik Bhagavati Prema Paramaishvarya Dristataha Sada Sampadhyate Naiva Bhayat Gaurava Sambhavat. One can never achieve such pure love for the personality of Godhead by concentrating on his supreme power, because in that mood, one invariably feels fear and reverence. So he's talking about the Parama Aishvarya, the supreme opulence, as demonstrated in Vaikuntha, Ayodhya, Dwarka, but hidden in Goloka Vrindavan. Krishna always has his opulence, but in Goloka Vrindavan, as we'll hear, he can cover it over for the sake of sweetness. So this Braja Prem can seem to be an inferior experience compared to Vaikuntha because it looks so simple. All right, yes, it's sweet, someone can say, but it looks like just the relationships of ordinary people. Whereas Vaikuntha is just loaded infinitely with opulences, majesty, splendor. beyond what anyone in the material world could ever conceive. And then here we have these simple village people milking cows and wandering in the forest and playing by the river. And this is the pinnacle. So, this is why we need to understand tattva, the science of the supreme, the science of Krishna. Otherwise, our mundane speculations can consciously or unconsciously take over. So let's get it straight. The Vraja Prem is not an inferior version of love of Krishna. It's not any kind of love related to worldly affection. It's far superior to any feeling known in three places, Sanatana Goswami explains. Far superior to what's known in the loka, the material world. Far superior than what is known as aloka, the coverings of the material world. And far superior to what is known even in Atiloka, the Vaikuntha planets beyond the coverings around the material universe. Knowing this, you can begin to understand the Ananda Kund, that pool of supreme sweetness that Damodar drowns the Brijbasis in. So I wanted to share especially with you one very deep purport from Briha Bhagavatamrita, which is so succinct, so packed with understanding. We're going to hear how Goloka has intimate sweetness, amazing opulence, and worldly simplicity. It's the worldly simplicity that kind of can be bewildering. I mean, even Brahma got bewildered. Even Indra got bewildered. Remember Brahma before the Brahma Vimohana Leela, the Leela in which he thought he was taking away, confiscating the cowherd boys and the calves? He was so bewildered by the scene on the bank of the Yamuna of Krishna and the cowherd boys taking lunch that he wanted to make an empirical investigation, a laboratory investigation. Is this my worshipful Lord really? Is this Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami? The scene looks so simple, even though it's so sweet. The cowherd boys surrounding Krishna on the bank of the Yamuna, taking lunch. Brahma thought to himself, let me make a test. So if Brahma and Indra become bewildered, we'll be speaking about Indra next weekend, Govardhan Puja. Indra actually thought that this little blue boy had become too full of himself and was denying Indra his share of the yajna. He thought he's competing with the little blue boy in the village. He became bewildered by his false ego. Of course, later he'll repent. So again, Goloka means intimate sweetness, amazing opulence, and worldly simplicity. And as we said, it's that third feature that can cause problems in us and others. Because Goloka combines majestic opulence of the spiritual world with the simple sweetness of the material world. The Brijbasis can possess inconceivable opulence, The village seems simple, but what is it made of? Chintamani, touchstone, and Kalpavriksha. The trees are all desire trees, and the cows are all Kamadhenus, wish fulfilling. So that's out of this world. That's super worldly. But at the same time, the bridge buses are so simple. They're so captivating by their simplicity. It's so charming. So Narada Muni explains about the relationships in Goloka. Although that reciprocal affection seems to follow the ways of the ordinary world, it is beyond the world. It combines intimate sweetness, amazing opulence, and worldly simplicity. So, in the purport presented by Sanatana Goswami and rendered by Gopi Pranadana Prabhu, we find some amazing themes that we can always think about. We get a photo, just like when we sing Jai Radha Madhava, the song by Bhakti Vinod Thakur, we get a photo of Goloka Vrindavan. Jamuna Tira Vanachari, Yashoda Nandana, Brajadana Ranjana. So here in this purport by Sanatana Goswami, you get such a photo. You can see by hearing. That's the best way to see. We hear how Golokanath, the Lord of Goloka, and his residents, his people, care for each other, care for one another in a way that looks like it resembles what people in the material world do. Yet there is inconceivable prem that has nothing to do with the material world. So this makes life in Goloka intriguing for us. It looks kind of like the relationships of the material world, but there's something going on that is just infinitely increasing and all pervading the life there. That is Krishna praying. So therefore, the loving dealings of Braj don't resemble anything in this world, although it seems like they do. They don't, because of the prem factor. Yes, Krishna seems to have a mother because some devotees want to love him in that way. But just think of the motherhood of Yashoda Mai. Just by her remembering Krishna, milk flows from her breast. There's some kind of love going on that is inconceivable. And what about Nanda Maharaj, Krishna's father? Don't you know? Have you had it in your mind, the photo of Nanda Maharaj? He's always drenched in tears, the flood of tears from his own eyes because of love for his son. So you've got a mother who's soaked with breast milk just by her remembering Krishna, and you've got a father whose clothes are always soaked with the flood of his own tears. And then you have the cowherd men, the gopas, seeing that everything they have is for Krishna's pleasure, even their wives and children and homes and cows and buffaloes. And we briefly mentioned before that even the old ladies of Braj have the same mood of Mother Yashoda. Yet sometimes they want to, some of them disguise themselves as their own young daughters to catch Krishna's eye. That's kind of inconceivable, isn't it? Old ladies disguising themselves as their own young daughters. What about the cowherd boys? They're so desirous of seeing Krishna that when they're in the forest and Krishna walks behind a tree, just for that brief amount of time, of course, time and space have no effect in the spiritual world, but for the sake of our talking about it, we use time and space characteristics. But just for that brief moment when he's walked behind a tree, the cowherd boys accompanying him feel the depths of separation. And then what to speak of the cowherd girls who stay behind in the village during the day, waiting for Krishna to return from the forest in the evening. Of course, there are confidential noontime pastimes in the forest, but that's something else. So please focus on these features of life in Braj with its praying. How what goes on there is both amazing and sweet, combining, as we said, the majestic opulences of the spiritual world with the simple sweetness of the material world. I know these days you may be especially asking yourself, what's so simple and sweet about the material world? But when things seem to be going good, you know that it seems to be like simple and pleasing. Those brief moments, remember, that come and go so quickly. That's why Srila Prabhupada referred to material so-called pleasure as third class. It seems to come, and even that's doubtful, and it definitely goes. Looks so inviting, looks so potentially satisfying, and like a shooting star in the sky, it's gone. But it's all the materialist knows, and so therefore we cling to it so madly, so desperately. We were explaining the other day Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's categorization of a materialist. He says, I am material because I have the pride that my material body, mind, and senses will satisfy me. That's what it means to be material, to have that kind of pride. We can think about that and see how we become victimized. So you have the Brijbasis possessing supreme opulence, Chintamani, and at the same time, they're simple. They celebrate festivals and they drench each other in yogurt and buttermilk and milk, and they throw curd around. Their real power, their real opulence is that they are able to participate in Krishna's pastimes. That's the real wealth. And they're simple in that they like to feast, they like to drink nectar in the company of friends and relatives. And then you have Krishna himself. He displays his opulence while acting as an ordinary child. And you know the number one example. As an infant, he drank milk from the breast of Putana while sucking out her life air. So here he is acting like a simple infant while doing something inconceivable. This is opulence, the way he shows it in Braj. His inconceivable powers are demonstrated in a way that comes through the portal, shall we say, of being a child, acting like an ordinary human being, while at the same time doing things that are inconceivable, achintya. So now let's go to the pastures of Nanda Maharaj, to the village of Nanda Maharaj. And hear more about this Kadyeshi Tageshu Bhakti, this bhakti that conquers. 10th canto, chapter 11, verses 7 through 9. We see that it's not only the Damodar Leela, although that's like the pinnacle, the one who binds everyone up with the ropes of material nature and karma, becomes bound by Mother Yasoda. Bear in mind, it's not only inconceivable that she was able to bind him, but it's also inconceivable that Nanda Maharaj was able to untie him. It goes both ways. How do you tie up someone who has no beginning or end, no inside or outside? And how do you untie such a person? Maybe you never thought that Nanda Maharaj was also dealing with the inconceivable, while at the same time, always thinking, this is my son. Why did Mother Yashoda tie him up? He was just trying to exchange love with her. He was smiling, even though inside he was ticked off at his wife. He was smiling because he wanted to impart confidence and surety to little Krishna as he untied him. But inside he was burning a bit. Why did you do this? There are other examples, though. Gopi bhi stobito nrityad Bhagavan balavat kochit udgayati kochin mugdas tadvasho dhadu yantravat. This verse tells us about the gopis getting little Krishna to dance by offering half of a burfi or half of a piece of sandesh. If you'll dance for us, we'll give you this. And so they would clap their hands and little Krishna would, like a puppet, dance. Smile and dance as if he's totally under their control, like a puppet. And to please them, sometimes he would sing very loudly. So here you have the controller of Brahma and Shiva showing you how he's controlled at every step by the Brajbasis. Let's think about his powers. He's Bhagavan, the Om Purnam, full of all powers, but he can forget his own powers and become so absorbed in his childhood pastimes, which are managed by his Leela Shakti. As we explained before, Krishna has a personal energy that manages his pastimes. So he doesn't even have to worry about, how do I enjoy next? how will my enjoyment be arranged? He has an energy that takes care of all that. So therefore, Krishna can forget himself and forget his own powers for his own pleasure. So the elder gopis would get him to dance according to their bidding because he's controlled by their love. And then Shukadeva Goswami tells about Mother Yashoda and her gopi friends telling Krishna, bring this, bring that. Objects or articles that were successively heavier. Bring a wooden plank. Bring a wooden pot. Bring your father's wooden shoes. So ordered by these older gopis, little Krishna would try to bring whatever they requested. Order supplier. But not in the way of material dharma, material religion. No, he's controlled, he's conquered by their love. He's willingly come under the control of their praying. Very sweetly, if they had him try to bring something that apparently was too heavy, Krishna would go up to it, the wooden object, and touch it. And then to give the impression he couldn't lift it, he would, after touching the object, just slap his body. In other words, I am strong. I can do it. We didn't do it. So he's showing, I've got the strength. So what does Shukadeva Goswami conclude about all this? Darshayams tad vidam loka atmano britya bashyatam Rajasyo vaha vaiharsham Bhagavan balachestatai. He's Bhagavan, but he's got so many activities of a child who tries to do so many things. So this verse will remind you of Damodarastik. Shukadeva Goswami explains, to pure devotees throughout the world who could understand his activities, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, exhibited how much he can be subdued by his devotees, his servants. In this way, he increased the pleasure of the Brajavasis by his childhood activities. Now, his demonstration, Akyapayantam, the demonstration is for devotees who are internal as well as external. So what's the difference? The external devotees are captivated by the unlimited Shakti, the unlimited potency of the Lord. Whereas the internal devotees, they're simply all about pure love. Whether Krishna is a supreme or not is not an issue for them. All they know is he's the most beautiful lover, he's the most beautiful son, the most beautiful friend, so forth. Now, the demonstration is not for impersonalists, no way. The demonstration is for the external devotees, meaning the Vaikunthites who know the value of devotees. They know the power of devotees. They have some glimpse of the understanding. Therefore, they get to see Damodar Leela. And this is Damodar Krishna's audience. Tadieshi ta geshu bhaktar jitatva. To all those who are attached to the Vaikuntha wealth and power and majesty, I've got something else to show you. And why am I showing it to you? Because you know devotees are very special. So watch this. And even for personalities like Brahma and Shiva, they have to see it to believe it. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says even Brahma and Shiva can't understand such conquest by bhakti. They can't understand it by hearing about it. So therefore they get to see it because it's so inconceivable. Even for those who have awareness of Krishna's Aishvarya, his power, opulence, and majesty. He wants to show that I'm controlled by my devotees' love. Nothing else can control me. So let's see how much time we can spend now that we've reviewed in the pastures of Nanda Maharaj. Let's see if we can quickly find that spot. No prematastam chataviti bande. Yes, this is a very interesting analysis of the features of Goloka. And then you can understand what's projected into Gokul, even though you don't see it, what's projected into Boma Vrindavan. Narada Muni wants you to understand, and we briefly mentioned this before, the special features. There's opulence, there's mercy, there's beauty, there's the splendor of the pastimes, and the subservience to his devotees, to Krishna's devotees. So he's going to start by talking about opulence first. And how does he do that? He's giving you insight into who is who in Braj Leela. Shukadeva Goswami is actually the one who's speaking this verse in Srimad Bhagavatam. And Sanatana Goswami uses it as support for what Narada Muni is saying. Evam nagudatma gati swamaya gopatma jatvam charitar vidam bayan. Reme ramalalita pada pallavo gramyai samam gramya vadisha chastitaha. In this way, the Supreme Lord, whose soft lotus feet are personally attended by the goddess of fortune, concealed his transcendental opulences by his internal potency and acted like the son of a cowherd. Yet even while enjoying like a village boy in the company of other village residents, he often exhibited feats only God could perform. So there are three perplexing themes that you can derive from this verse as the acharyas explain. First of all, Krishna is the son of a king. Nanda Maharaj is the king of the cowherds, not a king like Kamsa, but a king of the cowherds, Gopendra. But even though Krishna is the son of the king of the cowherds, he covers his powers with Yogamaya and fully absorbs himself in being a cowherd boy. That's number one. Number two, his lotus feet are served by Lakshmi, but he covers that also and plays like an ordinary boy. And then number three, he's got powers to kill any demon, but he generally covers his powers, although sometimes he engages in pastimes of killing demons, which those pastimes do show his great powers. So let's focus on the feet, whose soft lotus feet are personally attended by the goddess of fortune. This can be quite confidential because you could take it to refer to the consort of Lord Narayan in Vaikuntha, Mahalakshmi, or you could take it to refer to the supreme goddess of fortune, Srimati Radharani. So the acharyas show you can go either way. You could take it that yes, Mahalakshmi, the consort of Lord Narayan, is attracted to have a place in Brajalila, or you can take it that in other avatar forms, Krishna's feet are attended by Lakshmi, but she can't do that in Brajalila. Because the pleasure that happens for Krishna in Braj makes him indifferent to the pleasure of pastimes with Lakshmi that he experiences in other avatars or in Vaikuntha. So we're getting an insight into how you could say opulence herself receives indifference from Krishna in his Braj Leela. It's not the place for the Vaikuntha queen. But then you can consider that the Rama in this verse is not referring to Mahalakshmi, but to Radharani, because it's that Rama who gives the supreme enjoyment to Krishna. Especially since, as Sanatana Goswami explains, the happiness that Krishna gets from playing as a cowherd in Goloka is far greater than the happiness he gets in Vaikuntha from having his lotus feet served by Lakshmi. So, in other words, let's focus on what's going on in Goloka, which is far beyond what Lakshmi Devi can participate in. Or Rama can refer to the best devotee who gives pleasure to Krishna, Srimati Radharani. So this is Krishna and his opulence. He reveals himself as a cowherd by his actions. He accepts the cowherd boy form, and he hides his powers, his inconceivable powers, and acts like an ordinary friend. And this way, the sweetness becomes unlimited. So, in this way, we get some idea. We get some idea of the opulence of Goloka. Next comes mercy. And that will be all about Putana, especially. But the discussion of mercy we'll do next time makes Narada Muni jump the list. He jumps over beauty and the splendor of the pastimes to get to Krishna's subservience to his devotees. Because talking about mercy immediately reminds him of such leelas as a Damodar leela in terms of subservience to his devotees. So this shows you that in talking about Krishna, ecstasy triumphs. Things don't often go according to plan. Narada Muni gets carried away with ecstasy. Shukadeva Goswami gets carried away with ecstasy. This is the nature of Krishna Katha. All right. Let's see if anyone has any questions. I could go on for another hour, but it's getting late.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, once again, I thank you so much for the wonderful Krishna Katha and enlightening us on the pastimes of Lord Shri Krishna. To the devotees, if you've got any questions, please just unmute yourself and feel free to ask the question. There's one question, Maharaj, from Isha. Go ahead, Mataji, you can unmute yourself.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna Maharaj Ji, Danvat Pranam. Please accept my humble obeisances. I have a question. Like we always say that something bad is happening with a person. We always say this is because of their previous karams and all. But the person who is actually doing wrong things to the other person, how does that work? It is like very complicated thing for me to understand. Please forgive me if that's a silly question, Maharajji.
You would like to know the complexities of enjoying and suffering in this world. Who gets the credit? Who gets the blame? A devotee always feels that whatever happiness is coming his or her way is more than what you deserve. And whatever distress is coming your way is less than what you deserve. So it's true in the karmic fields of activities that there's action and reaction. Someone injures someone, and that person has to suffer for what he or she has done to some other person or creature. For devotees, it's not exactly karmic reaction. So you have to be careful. Because as Lord Brahma himself explains, karmani nadahati kintu cha bhakti bhajam govindam adi purusham tamahamajami. What devotees experience And by devotee, we mean someone who's following the bhakti process fully. What a devotee experiences is a special blend personally administered by Krishna. It looks like karma, but actually it's not. It's something personal between Krishna and the devotee. Krishna knows how to treat his devotees so that they don't become too attached to the material world, and so that they become more desirous of Krishna's association. You had something else in mind, or?
No, Maharajji. Thank you so much, Maharajji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So we were speaking, since no one's talking, I'll talk. We were speaking about the pastures of Nanda Maharaj and how simple pastures, those in New Zealand know a lot about pastures, paddocks. In those pastures, the Lord's highest opulence is there. So that highest opulence actually, at its deepest level, refers to the coming of Srimati Radharani and her participation in Braj Leela. That's the highest opulence of the pastures of Nanda Maharaj. So as we explained, you can take it as, you can take the mention of the supreme opulence as Mahalakshmi, but she can't participate in Braj Leela. You can go deeper and take it that Srimati Radharani will appear. Narada Muni echoes the verse of Shukadeva Goswami that we talked about by saying, the pastures of Nanda Maharaj, unique in their features, have become the land in which the Lord's highest opulence personally sports. The opulence whose mere sidelong glance creates all the glories of the material world, and who serves as mistress of the household for the Lord of Vaikuntha. So it seems, oh yes, this is Mahalakshmi, the mistress of Lord Narayan's household, and whose glance creates the glories of the material world. But as we said, you can go deeper and realize in this way that the opulences of Braj are greater than even the opulences of Vaikuntha. Then again, Mahalakshmi, the goddesses of fortune in Vaikuntha, are expansions of Srimati Radharani. Just as the queens of Dwarka are. There's a technical difference, if you want to get into it. The difference between reflection and shadow. The queens of Dwarka are in that way closer to, as expansions to Srimati Radharani than are the queens of Vaikuntha. But that's a technical point. In any case, if you consider that Mahalakshmi is the expansion of Srimati Radharani, you can say that in that way, Mahalakshmi is most fully manifest in Braj. She's most fully manifest as her source, as Srimati Radharani. So this is the home of Nanda Maharaj, eternally the abode of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and his transcendental qualities. And even from the very beginning of Krishna's pastimes in Gokul, from the very beginning, it's the place where the goddess of fortune has her pastimes. And the acharyas point out very delicately that that statement means Srimati Radharani is present. All right. We'll continue next time.
Sorry, Maharaj, Hare Krishna. Maharaj, we've got the Gita Govinda Mataji. I've got some question.
Okay.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, may sincere Christ Prabhupada. So we see that Srila Prabhupada, he advises us to approach the deities in the mood of Lakshmi Narayan. And then we see from this verse the idea that one becomes free from all conceptions of awe and reverence. So what is that transition, and how does one make sure that that transition is in the mature stage as opposed to the immature stage?
Nectar Devotion, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Rupa Goswami, and Srila Prabhupada instruct that even in the stage of Raganuga Bhakti, when your spontaneous attraction for Krishna is revived, nevertheless, externally, you still follow all the protocols of devotional service. It's a mistake to think that on the higher stage of bhakti, you just throw away all devotional regulations and just kind of be like an avaduta. No. Externally, you follow all the practices, while internally, you're relishing your attraction. And that stage comes of its own accord. Does that answer your question, or you'd like another aspect to be elaborated upon?
Just, I think more in like you were saying that the rules and regulations are there as a servant and not the master. So then when we have our personal expression with the deity, how do we make sure that that's not sentimental?
You can't legislate what is someone's inner feelings. Deity worship especially means punctuality and cleanliness, regulation. That doesn't mean that everyone who's standing in front of the deity is only there because of the force of rule and regulation. That can be for some, but for others, they may be spontaneously attracted. Let me be there and see and sing for, worship the deity. But externally, it can all look the same. That's why I brought up the point, the crucial point, that externally you follow the protocols, whereas internally your spontaneous attraction for Krishna can be revived or is reviving progressively. So we don't want to throw out of Nectar of Devotion the whole section about Raganuga Bhakti. At the same time, we don't want to artificially force ourselves into that terrain. Fools rush in where angels fear to tread. Certainly you can hear about it. That's why Nectar Devotion is written. you humbly hear and humbly serve. And gradually, for the devotee who properly follows the bhakti practice, gradually something develops. The example always given is about a girl attaining puberty. It happens. If things proceed as normal in material nature. Similarly, if things proceed as normal in the practice of sadhana bhakti, one progresses in sadhana bhakti from the Vaidhi bhakti stage of rules and regulations to the Raganuga stage. And the Raganuga stage is also part of sadhana bhakti, by the way. So different persons, to sum up, different persons can be in different consciousness, standing in the same temple room before the same deities.
Thank you, Maharaj.
All right. I thank you all for your kind association. Till the next time, Hare Krishna.
Yeah, Hare Krishna Maharaj, we'll just request
Krishna.
Nitai Pat Prabhu. We'll just request Nitai Pat Prabhu to pass the photo
Hare Krishna
things.
Maharaj. Hare Krishna Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. On behalf of all the devotees present here, we would like to express our heartfelt gratitude in so wonderfully established the super excellence of Vrajaprem over the Aishwarya Bhav of Vaikuntha and Dwaraka. And very nicely you explained that the real wealth of the Vrajavasis is the ability to participate in Krishna's pastimes. And also the highest opulence of Nanda Maharaj's pastures is the coming of Srimati Radharani. Thank you so much, Maharaj, for your wonderful association and inspiring our absorption in Krishna through your regular and continued association. We pray that you give us more of your time in the near future. Thank you so much once again. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu. If I'm right, we will be seeing Maharaj on next Sunday, where he will be speaking on the glories of Govardhan. So that will be next Sunday. His Holiness Devamrita Maharaj